Hello and welcome back to FatbossTV. Today we're back from more raid testing, and today we're having a look at Tyrant Velhari in the Hellfire Citadel on the 6.2 PTR.
Yes, and this boss, pretty interesting, I'd say.
Yeah.
It's a 3-phase fight, and each phase she gets like an aura that goes on the entire raid. That means you need to play slightly differently because it's like fucking you over in one way or another, which I think is pretty goddamn cool. But generally, her mechanics are pretty easy to deal with. We actually managed to kill her on the PTR. And
by accident.
Yeah, kind of by accident towards the end of testing. But either way, we've got a good look at her, and yeah, she's pretty decent.
As with all our raid coverage that we do on the PTR, this boss will probably change before it reaches live servers. This video is just to sort of give feedback on the boss and just sort of to show you guys exactly how this boss may potentially work on live servers. But there will be a full FatBoss guide as soon as it is released in the first week.
Now, as I said, this fight is a 3-phase encounter. However, she does have 3 main abilities that she'll do across all of her phases, and they remain unchanged. The first of which is Edict of Condemnation. This will place a debuff on a random player, and over the course of this debuff, which is roughly 9 seconds, you'll take large amounts of magic damage that is split between everyone within the AoE circle. However, every time you are hit by the damage, the AoE circle gets slightly smaller. So first it's a huge circle, so loads of people get hit, then a smaller circle, then a tiny weedy circle. So the idea is that you have at least like 4 people stacked up in this, otherwise the person inside is gonna die. Well, at least without an immunity.
Now for your healers to worry about is something called Touch of Harm. This is just another debuff that is placed on a random target that just makes this target absorb a large amount of healing. The only way to remove this debuff is just to flat out heal it. You just heal so much and eventually it will just drop off. But you can in fact dispel it. But if you do dispel it, it will just make the amount that's left in this shield jump to a new target. So you will still have to keep healing it up until it eventually does completely disappear. Dispelling it just simply allows you to heal targets that had the debuff just so you can heal them back up to full health. Because while they have the shield on them, you do not affect their overall health pool. You only affect the shield.
Now, something for the tanks to worry about is something called Seal of Decay. This just means that the boss's melee attacks will occasionally apply a debuff that reduces the amount of healing that you receive by 10% for 16 seconds. So, tank debuff switch.
Pretty much.
Yeah, just whenever you want.
Taunt. So, as Alex was saying, in each phase, the boss will also apply an aura to the entire raid, as well as have a unique ad. Now in phase 1 you have the Oppression Aura. This just again puts another debuff, but it's on the entire raid, and all this debuff does is that every time your character moves, you take a bit of damage. But the effect of this debuff gets stronger and stronger the longer this phase lasts. So the idea is, towards the end of the phase, if you move too much, you just kill yourself.
Yeah, which can cause problems, of course, with Edict of Condemnation, where you're supposed to be stacking up and everything. Towards the end of it, you're like, I should go and help by stacking up, but I'll probably die running over there. So you just got to be quite clever with how you space out your raid and everything, and generally try not to move too much. Another thing that makes this Aura of Oppression pretty goddamn awful is something called Annihilating Strike. This will focus on a player, and after a couple of seconds, it will deal damage to anyone within a cone in the direction of that player. And all players hit by this have a little circle that spawn underneath them called a Searing Blaze, and pretty much this just explodes after 3 seconds and it'll knock you up and deal damage. So if you are hit by the Annihilating Strike, one, you take some damage anyway, which is bad, but then you need to move out the Searing Blaze, which means you'll also be taking damage, because this Searing Blaze, it'll knock you up, which will do damage because knocking up is movement as well. It's pretty vicious. The way that we actually dealt with this is just being spread around the boss, so as few people as possible were hit by the initial Annihilating Strike. But if you are hit by it, just move from the Searing Blaze, and hopefully your healers can keep you up while you have to move around.
Now sadly in phase 1 you can't just stand still the entire time. There is another ability that you need to move from called Infernal Tempest. This is a 4.5 second channel where she'll deal ticking damage to every single raid member, but it also does splash damage of about 2 yards off each player. Now each time you do take ticking damage, you'll also spawn a Searing Blaze right underneath your location, and in total you'll spawn around 4 of them per cast. So obviously you need to be spread when this ability comes in, otherwise you'll be doing splash damage to each other, but you'll also have to move from the blazes on top of that. Now you don't actually have to move each time a blaze spawns. On the PTR you could actually stand there with one underneath you and another one will spawn, but the first one won't detonate, so you can actually stand there, let 2 spawn underneath you and then move. That will just, you know, generally reduce the amount of movement that you actually do, and therefore will reduce the amount of damage you take from the aura debuff. And on top of this, of course, the boss will also spawn an ad. There is a unique ad every single phase, and in this phase it's something called an Ancient Enforcer.
Now when it enters the room, it will knock all players back, dealing around 40k damage for the entire raid, but you'll also be taking damage because when you're knocked back it counts as movement, so this knockback is extra vicious, but it only does it when it enters the room, and it's nothing too bad, because it normally spawns quite early on in the phase, only at 90% HP, so you don't take too much damage yet. Now this ad only has one ability called Enforcer's Onslaught. This will create an orb to spawn in front of the ad, and it will travel in a straight line towards the side of the room, and bounce back and return to the ad. Anyone caught in this orb's path will take fire damage and spawn a searing blaze underneath them, so generally move from the orb. You can face this ad away from the majority of players, and like say you are all spread out around the boss, you could leave like one gap for that orb to keep going through, because it will go in the direction that the tank is facing it. So all you have to do is just face this ad away from the majority of players and make sure you just don't get hit by the orb. And we just cleave this ad down slowly throughout the entire phase, because it isn't that much of a big deal to deal with. It's just, you can completely avoid the orb, so there's no like rush to kill him.
Yeah, the idea of phase 1 really is just kill the boss, or well, transition the boss into the second phase before this aura of oppression gets too ridiculous and it gets to the stage where you move a tiny bit and you take half your health in a fucking single tick.
Yeah.
So providing you can do that and you get the boss to around 70% health, this is when phase 2 will begin. Do note though is that if the ad is still up at this point, it will remain up, so you do need to kill it off eventually. You can't just ignore it completely. Now as soon as phase 2 does hit, the aura of oppression is completely removed and is replaced with a new aura. This is Aura of Contempt. This again is also a debuff that just causes players unable to be healed above 80% of their maximum HP. So the entire raid is going to be on 80% the entire time. However, like in the first phase, these auras do get stronger and stronger. So that 80% will go down to 70, to 60, etc. So again, this is another phase where you need to kill the boss kind of quick before your health goes to 10% and you can't take any damage, because otherwise you're going to get one shot. Now the boss will lose her Annihilating Strike. She'll also lose her Infernal Tempest, which means no Searing Blazes will no longer spawn, but they are replaced with other abilities.
Now her main ability in this phase is something called Tainted Shadows. This will do around 80k shadow damage to a single random player, but it will also cause them to do about 75k splash damage to anyone within 5 yards. So this doesn't really sound too bad. One person every now and then takes a bit of damage. Oh no. But however, there is a debuff that enhances the potency of this ability, named the Font of Corruption. This is a 50-second debuff that is applied to a couple of people in your raid on each cast. What it will do, it will make it so you will always be targeted with Tainted Shadows on top of the other random player as well. So say 2 people get the debuff, 1 random person will be hit, plus those 2 people with Font of Corruption. When you have this debuff, it makes you immune to the splash damage aspect of this ability. However, it doesn't make you immune to the initial damage. So the idea is if you have Font of Corruption, you can actually stack up to get healed. If everyone who has Font of Corruption is in one spot, yeah, you're going to be doing a shit ton of splash damage, but all of you are immune to it, so it really helps your healers out. This Font of Corruption helps your healers, which is a little bit peculiar. Yeah, more people are getting hit, but it does allow people to stack. So the idea is, if you do get this font, stack up in an assigned place, it really does ramp up. Like half of your raid can have Font of Corruption at any given time. So yeah, you really do need to stack up. And then as soon as it drops from you, make sure you get out, because
otherwise you're going to get one hit.
You are literally going to get one hit, especially because you have a reduced health pool at this point as well. So it's very, very simple with this phase in terms of the boss's abilities. Font of Corruption, stack up, otherwise spread out. And then hopefully your healers can just carry this whole Aura of Contempt that is slowly draining your health pool.
Now in this phase, the unique ad that spawns is the Ancient Harbinger. When it spawns, again, it will also knock you back, just like the ad did in phase 1. But of course, it's nowhere near as bad because you don't get screwed over from moving. Now this ad has one ability, which is the Harbingers Mending. This is an interruptible cast that will heal the boss for 5% health if it does go off, and it will also apply a dispellable hot that just heals the boss for even more. So the idea is that you do interrupt it, so you don't have to fuck around with a heal. Now each time you do interrupt the Harbinger, it will increase its casting speed by 15%, and this does stack. So the first cast will be pretty slow, it's around 3 seconds or so, and she doesn't cast it that frequently, so you don't need to worry about it too much, but eventually, I mean for us it went on around 4 stacks or 5 stacks. This is like a 1.2 second cast, or even shorter. So in order for you to interrupt that, especially on PTR with the lag,
yeah,
it becomes very, very difficult. So you need to make sure that you do kind of kill this ad off quickly, because you can't just leave it up forever.
Yeah, in comparison to the first ad, which really didn't do anything, this ad has kind of got a timer on it. So what we did is that we did nuke it down pretty goddamn quick. Even though the boss is very important to kill as well to get it into the last phase, this ad, if you leave it unchecked, is just going to wipe you anyway. So do make sure that you kill this ad and you'll be absolutely fine. So really, this phase is very, very simple. Interrupt ad, kill ad, stack up for the font, and that's about it.
Yeah, and then when your font is off, don't stack. Yeah. Pretty much it.
Now, when the boss hits 40% HP, phase 3 will begin. As soon as this happens, once again, the Aura of Contempt is completely removed and replaced with a final aura, which is amazing, called the Aura of Malice. Now, this is a debuff, once again, that affects all players, but it does increase the damage players do by 20% and the damage that they take by 10%. Now, this effect gets rapidly stronger throughout this phase, and it does actually cap out at 200% extra damage and 100% extra damage taken. So, you are like a glass cannon in its purest form. You do so much damage, but you're getting pretty wrecked. Now, as it has changed phase, the boss has lost her Tainted Shadows and her Font abilities, and they are replaced with 2 new ones, the first of which is Bulwark of the Tyrant.
This will just do a flat amount of shadow damage towards the tank and a couple of other random people within the raid. Every time it hits these players, it will also spawn a pool of like shadowy shit underneath you that does ticking damage. So to counter this, we actually just had the entire raid stacked up underneath the boss the entire time, and every time players were hit and the pools formed, we just moved away. The other ability is Gavel of the Tyrant, and this just deals fire damage to the entire raid and will knock them back.
Yeah, which kind of sucks if you get knocked back into a pool.
Yeah.
So just be careful about that.
Now, there is also an ad in this phase, of course, and once again, when it does spawn, it will knock you back, so there's another opportunity to get knocked back into a pool. And while this ad is active, he just reduces the amount of damage the boss takes by 90%. And because the damage reduction is so large, you can't really ignore this ad. So what we decided to do was just switch to the ad, blow him up immediately, and then switch back to the boss. And because we have a 200% damage increase, the boss just melts.
Yeah, it's really weird. The fight does feel a little bit slow until you get to this phase, and it's like, oh, a new ad came in. Oh, the ads beforehand took ages to die. And then you like sneeze at him and he falls over because you've got so much damage increase. And then the boss literally just melts. But yeah, that's pretty much the entire fight. I think there's a lot of opportunities for like trying out loads of different strats on this fight,
especially the last phase.
Yeah, there's lots of different mechanics and like you can deal with them in loads of different ways. So I'm sure people will come up with some amazing things to do. But yeah, I think it's a really decent boss. It's a very solid boss. The last phase is amazingly fun, and all the other phases are super fucking scary because not only do you have like no health in phase 2, but in phase 1 you can't even move around, which is really sad as a hunter. But yeah, it's a really good fight, and I can't really wait to see it on live. Should be good.
But thank you very much for watching, guys. If you did enjoy this video, then please do drop us down a like. It helps us out a lot. And if you'd like to see any more PTR videos, then please do click in the link in the description. That'll take you straight to our playlist. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you.